Mr. Goodman, good morning.
Good morning.
We're delighted to have you with us this afternoon here in Greece. Thank you very much for being with us.
I only wish I could be in person in Thessaloniki, one of my favorite cities in Greece, and so
Well,
inspiring to the world.
oh, thank you. Well, this is the second Thessaloniki Future Thinking Dialogues. Perhaps during the third one or the fourth, and so on. We'll be very happy to host you here.
That would be just great.
Let me um, let me start by setting the scene. And could you please tell us a few words about the Institute of International Education?
Thank you for the opportunity. And actually, I figured out what we do is connect the dots. It's a great slogan for your conference, but I
Thank
don't
you.
think any of the dots in the world can be really connected without the experience of international educational exchange. Greece helps to lead in that. You're coming up on your 70th anniversary of the Fulbright program, which is such an important connector in research, development, innovation between America and Greece. Uh, and we were founded right after the end of World War One to promote international educational exchange and scholarships. We very early on got into the rescue of scholars and the helping of students in emergencies. And we do have we're in 33 different countries as I speak, with about 600 staff. And we help about 20,000 students, scholars from all walks of life and disciplines to have a deep experience in another country through an educational scholarship.
Thank you. How how does the institute prepare the students and the professionals for the global workforce through the international education strategies and program services?
Well, I think it's so important for our people, whether they're young students or accomplished professors, to have the international connection, to have the international experience, to have an understanding of how other people think and how other people do research and how other people teach. So over the years, we've developed orientation programs, enrichment programs, protocols that help maximize the experience. But the key often in the first step is making sure someone goes through the procedures to get a passport and then thinks about where they're going to go and how they're going to matriculate in a university and learn the experience of actually leaving your comfort zone uh, and living in another culture, in another type of environment, or more than just a tourist visit. And while we've been doing this for 103 years, no year is the same as the previous one. There are crises, there are pandemics, there are changes of plans. And part of what our staff does is work with the student or the professor all through the experience so that they can make the most of it.
Having studied abroad, having been born in Greece and studied abroad, I could not agree with you more on what you just said. I mean, I think the experience of not just studying, but living somewhere else and being dependent on yourself rather than dependent on your parents and having to deal with everything from the more meaningless like eating and drinking to finding a house and paying your bills. It's incredible. Yes.
And it's something you can't do really effectively on Zoom or put on a pair of virtual
Absolutely.
reality goggles and think you're in Thessaloniki and trying to get a tram or a bus or get to the university or enter the library. You have to experience it on the ground. And, and I think that's what we need to keep doing for the next generations.
I agree once again. I think the energy that you get by being here and being among other students and anywhere for that matter, not just the Thessaloniki. It's incredible. How many countries does the institute collaborate with?
I think the only place we don't work is North Korea. Uh, we have relationships with every country that I could think of. The Fulbright program operates for the Department of State in 150 countries. I know there are 200 countries and territories. But the only place I can think of where we haven't done something or not doing something or haven't had real connection is North Korea.
Thank you. Now, how do you, obviously, you measure it somehow, but how do you measure the success of each exchange program? Is there a ranking?
No, but there are two ways I come at it. One is graduates of these recipients of these fellowships and scholarships, whether they're public or from the State Department or private, have already won 108 Nobel Prizes. Uh, and and most of those prizes get traced to an experience they had by going to another country, working in another person's laboratory. Half of all the Nobel Prizes uh, won by Americans are won by Americans who actually were born in another country. But we track our alumni, our grantees, our trustees, and ever since 1919, it is almost every year there is a Nobel Prize winner that has some connection to a program we had. The most meaningful, immediate way to track it is if you look at particularly a student that has had a overseas experience. You'll notice that they will have higher grades after returning. They will finish their degree program in a shorter time or on time compared to, this is especially true for Americans, than for students that have not had that experience. So we know the experience of going someplace else, and as you said earlier, learning to pay your bills and learning to navigate in a new situation creates an energy that lasts well into somebody's return. Uh, when we were founded, of course, our founders were very mindful of World War I, and they believed that if people had studied in each other's countries and understood each other's cultures, that this would be a path to eliminating war. Uh, we have not eliminated war, but I sure think we've made the world a less dangerous place in many eras because we've had people in exchanging, people putting themselves in somebody else's mindset, understanding what is going on. And I think it helps very much in tense situations when our officials or your officials are negotiating in a tense situation. If someone says, I studied in your country, or I sent my son or daughter to study at your university. And it breaks the ice, and it reminds us that whatever our current tensions are, we all have common aspirations to have a world that's safer for our children.
Thank you. You spoke of collaborations. Greece and the US have an increasing collaboration on the education field, besides, of course, other sectors. As you're very well aware, the Greek-US relations are at an all-time high, better than it ever been before. But coming back to
And
education,
also Greek universities and American universities have begun exploring collaborations and internationalization strategies that are also in the fall will lead a delegation, I think the largest delegation in IA's history, of nearly 30 U.S. university leaders to meet with your rectors to deepen research, collaboration, partnerships as part of the internationalization strategy that the rectors have embraced, that the Prime Minister and the Minister of Education and Religious Affairs have embraced, and it's helped America rediscover Greece and to think of Greece not only as a country of antiquity, but a country that is vibrant in research, development, innovation, welcoming the interchange with American institutions. So it really is an all-time high, and far more than discovering that Greece has many antiquities that are still important to study. Greece also has a future that's important to be connected to.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was going to ask you about this, but in a different sense, whether there are any goals which have been set for this collaboration between any specific goals, or will we wait for fall for that?
Well, the aim of the program, and we've been working on it now on the U.S. and Greek sides for 3 years. The delegation's been delayed, of course, by COVID,
Yes.
but the goal is that each university will have a partner in Greece, and it'll be an institutional partnership, which is different than Professor A likes Professor B, and they write an MOU to do research or do a course together. But when one of them leaves or goes to another university, the institutional relationship may not be sustained. And the aim of this partnership program is to end the delegation with a series of solid institutional partnerships that lay out a 3 and 5 year plan for the deepening of that collaboration, both at the student level and at the faculty research level.
And it will not be one way. It will be US Greece, but it will also be Greece US.
It has to be both ways, and I think both sides want that.
No. Would you see a further collaboration between the Institute and Erasmus Plus program in order to bring closer the American educational system with the European one, which is very well known here in
Well,
Greece?
we're part of the G7. We just had our G7 summit on international education, hosted by the German Academic Exchange Service, the DAAD in Berlin. We see in the G7 context a tremendous amount of opportunity for collaboration, also for responding to immediate crises like student emergencies, the invasion of Ukraine, the need to help refugee and displaced professors and students. So we've tended to work that way. Erasmus is still a mystery to many Americans. The processes and procedures and are still a little complicated for us to understand. We on our side have very complicated policies and procedures, so this is not a criticism of Europe or the Erasmus program, but it's been easier and more and very rapid to work through the G7 right now, and I think as Europe has more presence as the European Commission has more presence in America and explains to American higher education institutions and students what Erasmus is, I think there will be interest in doing that. We just haven't gotten to that point in any substantial way yet.
Speaking of European and US educational systems, in your opinion, which is the biggest advantage of the education system in the US? Do you have in mind any other education system or model that could be an inspirational example for other countries to emulate?
Well, I think every country's higher ed system is first unique to that country, and it's a product of historical development, politics, policies. The U.S. is pretty unusual because education is not a governmental or federal responsibility. It's not mentioned in our Constitution, the word education. Um, and only rarely has the federal government stepped in and said, we're going to do something to create an education system. Abraham Lincoln did that when he signed the Land Grant College Act, giving federal lands to universities, colleges to be built. But because we had 200 years of private educational institutions before that, we built a lot of universities and a lot of colleges, and they're all self-governing. Some are regulated by the individual states, others are entirely private. But the net impact of this was that we have about 4,000 accredited colleges and universities, and that makes us pretty unique. And it means that as an international student coming to the US, you have many, many choices to make. First, geography. Where do you want to live? A warm climate, a cold climate, 4 seasons, 2 seasons, West Coast, East Coast. And then there are many different ways to study in our system. And you can enter thinking you're going to become a doctor and end up becoming a lawyer. Or you can think you want to study humanities and then you get interested in biology and then you end up studying molecular biology and getting a degree in that. So there's a lot of choice, a lot of flexibility, and you can know quite transparently the quality of all of these institutions in particular fields, because there are many public and private evaluation systems that publish annually. This is a good school for this, but this is a better school if you're interested in forestry or veterinary medicine. So the quality, the multiple opportunities you have make this a pretty unique country educationally, and we have room. When at our high point, we had in these 4,000 colleges and universities about 20 million students enrolled. And now we have about 16 million because we have a lower birth rate. There are fewer people going in that age cohort, getting to 18 to 24. And so we didn't close universities. We didn't close colleges. So that's why we have room for international students. We have procedures to welcome them. We have well-established pipelines in many cases, big and small. Alumni in one generation recommend their children to go where they went to the next generation. And I think it's just the sheer size and the quality and the choices that you have in figuring out what you want to do and where you want to go, and you can do it in America.
Yes, I think first of all, this was a very fantastic description of the U.S. education system. I think it's what I'm keeping from your answer is the fact that you're not afraid to evaluate and improve on the quality of the education that you are providing. And 16 million students is still a huge number, huge. Of course, that is relative to the population of the US, but coming from a country of 10 million, 16 million students alone is a huge number.
If I could just say the other thing that it's again not unique to America, but I mentioned we have 4,000 accredited colleges and universities, and that's every 10 years with a 5-year interval of a midterm review. To get accreditation, you have to demonstrate that you have a student health service, an adequate library, and enough faculty for the number of students you have, that students are graduating on time or close to on time. And it's highly decentralized. It's regionally based. There's a Northeast part of the United States that has an accrediting association, a southern part of the United States that has, and when you, and they recruit people to be on accrediting visits all throughout the 5 and 10 year intervals, and the university or college themselves to prepare for an accreditation visit and to be reaccredited. It's basically a year-long study of themselves. How are we doing? What's our graduation rate? What's the dropout rate? What's the average grade? So many things go into that. I've done it twice in my university career for the university I was teaching at, and it's a tremendous amount of work, but it's one way that someone coming from another country can read the accreditation report and say, yes, this university takes students seriously. It has the resources, it has the facilities, it has the strategic plan in place in my field or in my area, in my discipline. So we're always self-evaluating. In addition to the annual surveys that newspapers, whether it's U.S. News and World Report or Shanghai Jiaotong or the Times Higher Ed of London, are constantly ranking and evaluating universities. So it's a culture of self-evaluation, which gives someone coming from the outside a lot of information about a college or university they might want to attend.
That is tremendously powerful. We are in a process of reevaluating our entire educational system, and we're battling with the demons of evaluation. I think we will overcome that, and our new educational system here in Greece will be far superior to what we had before for the good of our children. Let me ask you one last question. The education system nowadays emphasizes so much on competition among students instead of collaboration. We've discussed collaboration between educational institutions and countries before. What can we do? What can be done in order to turn the tables around?
Could you possibly ask that again?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So education puts a lot of emphasis on competition rather than collaboration. What can we do in order to turn that around and put more emphasis on working together, collaborating, rather than competing one against the other in institutions, in educational institutions?
When I was a teacher, I always team taught a course, and my co-teacher was Madeline Albright. We taught the graduate international relations course at Georgetown for probably 10 years together. She said every student had to be part of a group and write a final paper on some key global issue or some key global challenge or problem. And I thought that was a terrific idea. Georgetown being a very competitive place, good to have students work together. But then she said they all should get the same grade.
Mhm.
Because what she was trying to do is turn competition into collaboration. And I can't tell you how many appeals we had in those 10 years of students who would say, well, I was part of this group, but person A really didn't work so hard. At the end of the day, they didn't lift up they didn't contribute the section, so we had to write it quickly, and you gave me a B rather than an A, or a B rather than an A minus. And so could I please have the grade I earned and not be subject to the group result? And she was tough. none of those appeals ever worked. And we stood our ground that you had to work together on a thing, figure out who was going to do what section, and you all were going to get the same grade. And over the 10 years, we found that collaboration began to replace competition. And people realized that they had to work in groups, and sometimes in a group somebody got sick, and sometimes somebody didn't do the work, but you had to step up. And I think we solved the problem you've identified, and it still is a problem. At a pretty micro level, you've got to teach students that their success depends on working with others, and that it's not just about grades, it's about solving problems. And if you try to do this all by yourself, even if you get an A plus on the paper, you won't have solved climate change, you won't have solved the problem of war. You have to solve it in the context with other people. So I think you've identified a key problem, which we used to think was terrific, namely that let's have very competitive, very selective, and everybody compete against each other. And that produced a lot of energy, a lot of research, a lot of innovation. But now, in this century, what we've got to do is harness that to collaboration, cooperation, because we can't solve any of these key global issues alone.
Yes, I think the greatest example of how how much good collaboration can bring about is the way that all the pharmaceutical companies worked during the COVID pandemic to produce the vaccines. I mean, that's a
Absolutely,
fantastic
yeah,
example in
yeah.
in an area of research where usually one competes against the other in a cutthroat competition, not sort of a children's game. It's heavyweights.
So I think in the modern era, the the Olympiad, we have to be encouraging, is a team sport. You don't win the race only on your own. You have to train together, work together, run together. And there's so many examples from Greece's past. I'm looking forward very much to the future of our collaboration with Greece across so many areas, uh, because you're at the crossroads of both so many problems and so many opportunities. And I think you you have identified a key driver of what's going to make this century better than the last, and that's replacing competition with collaboration.
Thank you. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you for getting up this early in the morning to talk to me. I have a page full of notes, and I look forward to hosting you here in Thessaloniki. We'll continue the conversation at the next Thessaloniki Future Thinking Dialogues.
I so appreciate that. You're a great moderator, and I really appreciated all of your questions. And can I say Kalispera?
Very correct. Thank you. Kalispera from Thessaloniki. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.